All right, hello everyone. It is I, Tobbs, and today I am joined by none other than Bigglebuns, aka Ryan, aka our lead gameplay designer. And Ryan is here to teach us all about mesh merging. So if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. And with that, I'm just gonna toss it over to you, Ryan.
All right. So this is a really incredibly exciting feature that is now available in the editor. It has been in development for quite a while, and it is going to be one of the most impactful tools that you have available to improving the performance of games. And it specifically is going to address one of the biggest limitations of performance, which is just the raw number of objects that you have in your project. So I think everybody knows, making kinds of stone pathways and things with lots and lots and lots of copied objects, that can be really taxing on your game's performance. And one thing I want to say before I go into how the feature works and how to use it is it is a feature that is you'll see actually here, it is in a beta state. So this is a feature that is very complicated. It is really easy to use. It basically is one sort of action to enable it, but then it runs lots and lots and lots of code behind the scenes. So it is in beta right now, and that means there may be bugs, there may be some small issues that you find with it that need to be brought up as feedback. That's okay. It's going to get better and better over time. There are increasing optimizations that are going to be brought to it. So, where did it go? I don't know. This is a feature that's going to get better and better, and it's really, really exciting to see how much of an impact it can actually have on games. So I want to get started with how to use it. The way that you use it is really, really simple. It's just a new folder type. So the way you make a new group, you can now you can go in, you can do a new merged model, and it just creates this new object in the hierarchy. And what's going to happen is, with this object here, anything that you put underneath it is when you start the game, it is going to combine all of the different static meshes, and it's going to send all of that collision and visual data in sort of one big chunk. So there's, rather than lots and lots and lots of objects in your hierarchy that need to be processed by the render thread, it's actually going to take it all and sort of send it as one piece. And these objects won't even exist in the hierarchy once they've been added as a merged model. So this is all you would need to do for this silly looking pathway that I just made in 2 seconds. So that's actually it. So let me show what we're looking at here, because it's really good to see this in the profiler. Okay, so this has been merged. It's all in a merged model here, and you can see it has collision, it's acting normally. It's obviously not a great pathway, but what you're going to see when you actually look at the improvement that mesh merging offers is a decrease in primarily the rendering setup time. So if you look at a big project, what you're often going to see is your render time and your GPU time. And remember, the GPU time is synced up with the render thread time. So this can get really large if you have a very big scene, like 30,000 objects, or even more than that in some cases. And there's not really a good way to reduce that other than through this feature. So this is actually going to dramatically expand the size of maps that you'll be able to make, and it'll let you sort of improve the visual quality of a lot of the environment art that you make as well, by allowing you to have more total objects in the scene. So that is kind of what you're looking to improve with the feature. So let me go back to the example, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about how it works. So you'll see here we've got all these rocks, right? the way that mesh merging works is it just looks at static meshes. It's not actually looking at other things like the effects or sounds or other stuff. So if I add something silly here, so if I add a fire volume, I put that in the merge model, what's actually going to happen is when I run, the static meshes here, these rock blocks, are going to disappear from the hierarchy. And the fire volume is going to get pulled out of the merge model, and so it's still going to show up. So it does a really nice thing, which makes it a lot easier to use. So I can kind of show that here. All right. Yeah, so if you actually look in the hierarchy right now, this is the merge model. There's a different one here that I'm going to show in a second. And this is the group with all those rock blocks, and there's nothing under that. They're gone. And so when you're actually running your game, you're not going to be paying all of this cost to set up the rendering for this multitude of objects. And then the fire volume is nicely pulled out of it for you, so this is a lot easier to actually utilize. And you're going to want to go through as many objects as you can and merge them if at all possible. So that's going to be, I'm going to show a bunch of examples of that in a second. So let's see, what else do I want to show? So things that are not merged are, so like decals. These are just going to get pulled out automatically. It's really about static environment objects. The other thing that's important to know about this is the objects need to be in the hierarchy. So the way the code works is when you hit play to join the game, it's going to look at what's in your hierarchy, not things that are spawned in at runtime, but things that are actually in the hierarchy. And then it's going to run this mesh merging code and send all of that as this one big chunk of collision for players in the game. So if you are spawning something in, that's not a good candidate for something to be merged. It's really about stuff that's already in your hierarchy and is a static mesh.
Can I interrupt you with some questions, Ryan?
You sure can.
Excellent. So, Renezcell asks, how would I do this again? Folder with the objects. I think they just missed when you actually merged the model.
Oh, yeah. Yep. So, yes, this is what you do. So, you've got this super crate.
Yeah, super great.
And then you right click on it, and then you just do new model containing these.
Oh, no folder or a group needed.
Yep, that is all you have to do. It's very, very, very easy to use. It's almost too easy. There are a number of little tricks to know about that, and I can just, if people are joining, I can kind of go back over this for a little bit. So I want to get sort of the basics down before I go into the really cool examples that show how like crazy and powerful it is. So there's only one option that you have on the merge model, and that is this option for aggressive merge. Here the tooltip says it ignores the gameplay and rendering settings applied on the objects, uses default settings to merge. So I would typically recommend using the default setting, which is the non-aggressive merge. Aggressive merge is kind of like an advanced option, but I'll explain when you would use it and what it is. The default setting of the passive merge is going to do its best to maintain any settings that you have individually selected for the objects. So as an example of that, so let's say I have this column here, and then I want to merge that. And this is a good general tip, when you are actually making columns or anything freestanding, just get rid of this, you typically want to turn off camera collision, because this is something you'll see in games sometimes where your camera like bumps into something and it's like this really jerky motion. Anything that's freestanding, like this, column is sort of the easy example. You really want collision for the camera to be disabled. So that's just sort of good practice. However, when you do the non-aggressive merge option, it's still going to work, but there's sort of this thing that's happening that's not completely obvious, which is these columns are actually still here. So these didn't really get merged because you had explicitly disabled camera collision on them. When you use the aggressive merge option, that's going to actually that's going to go ahead and merge them. However, it's not going to have the camera collision disabled like you want. So when you do want to disable the camera collision, you just won't merge it. And it's totally okay. You don't have to get every single thing in your levels merged. But this is just something that you want to be aware of. And you want to sort of understand how it works right now, and then set up your merge groups accordingly. It is going to be improved over time, and there are more and more settings that are going to be sort of made to work with this. But in this case, you would probably just not merge this particular column, or you could just say, hey, I want to use the non-aggressive option, and it's not actually going to do the merge, but that's okay. It's still going to work 100% fine. So that's basically what this option is. The aggressive merge will show you the maximum amount of benefit that you can get from merging. And then let's see, there's a couple other things to know.
Okay,
So
I have one big question, to ask.
All right.
Okay, this is from Flamenta, and they think they found a bug with mesh merging.
Okay.
So let's see. I put a bunch of rocks together in a new area, and then while testing, realized that the items in the merge model would act as if they were taking damage if I attacked in their vicinity. Is this a bug or a feature? The items would pop up with the damage numbers, but not get damaged or disappear.
Whoa.
Sounds crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's probably something else going on in that scene. But yeah, I would need to take a look at exactly what's happening in that project to understand. That is not something that I've seen where there's some kind of a weird interaction with a script that's happening. But yeah, that's not a bug that I'm aware of. That's not to say that there isn't something weird happening, but yeah, I don't know. That's interesting.
Yeah, definitely not expected behavior, Flamenta. If you could provide us with like a little more info in the Core Bugs Discord channel, we can help you get to the bottom of that, or you'll help us get to the bottom of it if it is indeed a bug on our side.
Yeah. So I wanted to show one more thing quickly. Oh yeah, and also two things actually. One is when you use aggressive merge, it is going to give you warnings that a setting is going to be ignored. So this is really important to know that if you're just like, hey, I just want to get like all the benefit I can out of mesh merging, you can look at your event log and you can see specific warnings about things that are not going to work the way that you expect. So in this case, it's saying, stretch this out so you can see. So enable camera collision is disabled. The setting is going to be ignored. So this was the case where I did an aggressive merge and I wanted everything to get merged. I didn't care if it didn't maintain my settings, but this is letting me know that it's going to ignore that specific setting. Cool. I think that's pretty much all the basics. So you're going to look at a map and then you're going to look for big clumps of stuff that you want to put into merge models. So let me go over one more quick detail, just about how to decide what to put into a merge model. And I think it might be easier to, well, I can talk about it here. This is fine. So when you're actually merging something, you want to do, the best way to explain this is you want to do a sort of screen-sized chunk of stuff. And what that means is when you're looking at an object, if it's not been merged here, you're going to be rendering only the part that you can see on your screen. So in this case, there's a bunch of different blocks here. But if you're looking like this, you're not going to be paying the cost of on your graphics card rendering all of these different things. However, if you are merging something, remember it's going in as like one piece, and so you would actually be paying the cost of everything here. So it's slightly more expensive. So you want to kind of divide your merge groups into sort of a screen-sized chunk, and the worst case example, or like a very bad case example to illustrate this, is, so say I have this tower here, and I'm like, cool, I want to do a tower that's really far away. So making this, oops. So I've got towers all over this world in Towerland here. Okay, so in this case, the thing that I would really not want to do is take these all into a group and say new model containing these. Because what's going to happen is when I'm just looking at this tower here on my screen, I'm actually going to be on my graphics card rendering all of these other towers at the same time. So you want to do, and you don't have to be like crazy meticulous about this. Like, this is something where I would just be like, don't think too hard about it. It's not something you have to go nuts about trying to get right. But basically, if you can take the time to do it, it's usually better to separate these into individual merge models. Assuming you want to go in and have the most performant game possible, this is sort of the correct thing that you would do in a specific case. So now each of these are their own block, and they're going to be a little bit more optimal. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Cool. All right, so cool. I'm going to hop into some more specific examples. There's probably a lot that I'm not covering, but yes. So let me show Ophelia, and then I'll get to a few other examples. So this ship is interesting because we actually look at the number of objects. So it's 452 objects here, and this is like a great candidate. This is like a good kind of screen-sized chunk. So we've got this airship here, and say I was using this just as an environment prop, and I wanted to reduce the cost of it. So I'll look at it. It's 452 objects. I have it to the default setting, and then I go in here, and I look at it in the profiler, and you can see that the number of core objects is actually 445, which is pretty darn close to the number of mesh merge objects, which is weird. So I'm not really getting a lot of benefit out of it. So this is a really good candidate for doing an aggressive merge. And the reason for that is if you actually look at a lot of these individual pieces, they have many settings that are like specific UVs and specific materials that are set, different kinds of overrides, disable receive decals, a bunch of different things. And if you're using it and you're not really going to be like up close and like looking at every single detail, you can go with the aggressive merge option. And then it is going to merge everything here. There just might be a few slight visual differences. So now, when we look at the profiler, whoa, it's only 31 objects in the scene, which is amazing. So that's going to run so much better. If we didn't do any merging on it, should have probably showed that first. $464. So I think the other number was 445. So really only like 19 of the objects in this were getting merged with the non-aggressive version. So that's why it's good to check and kind of determine for each object which is the best approach. And then I'd say just kind of look at it and make sure that everything is looking as you'd expect. Again, it's possible that there will be small visual bugs or discrepancies. It's good to mention those in Discord so that we can get those tracked down and get everything working as well as possible. Great. So now I want to show, let me show this crazy project here. So I did this as an experiment because I wanted to see the sort of the limits of what mesh merging could do and do a cool kind of before and after that showcased like how powerful it was. So this project is really big. It is like 90,000 objects. That's way more.
Moly.
Yeah, it's way more than the recommended amount according to the the performance limits.
According to us.
According to us, yes. So this, and I actually turned off visibility and collision, or not collision, but visibility for a lot of the things in this level, so I could run it. But what's going on here is this whole space that I'm looking at is actually has these houses that I made that are just like simple little cathedral-y looking houses. Camera faster. And one of these, and so each one of these has, I believe, 12 of these houses. So here's one. Each house is 230 objects. Whoa. So you can see that each house group is going to be like 2,700 total objects for one of these groups. And if you look at my hierarchy at this madness, there are a lot of house groups. So it's a lot of stuff, and this is something that would just not work at all. This is totally non-functional, and the frame rate's going to be really, really bad. So I have the profiler turned on for this map, so I'm actually going to oh no, that's a teaser, don't look at that. So I'm actually going to run it with the profiler so you can see this like insane map with way more buildings than would be like needed. And I also added, just to make it kind of feel like a game, this has all of the Sniper Alley gameplay logic. So it's just a copy paste of the game logic from Sniper Alley with a bunch of buildings. So really simple. And the first thing you'll notice here is that the load, if you can see the load screen, is fairly lengthy. Cool, so we are in. It's gonna pop me on in a second. So we have Sniper Alley music and lighting. The match is starting. Got the rifle. And so yeah, so the first thing you can see here is there are almost 90,000 core objects in the scene, which is really expensive. I'm inside this building, so I'm not actually looking at all of this like army of houses, but you can tell that you're going to have problems depending on where you're standing in this map. So if I jump out, it's a sort of endless ocean of houses, and I made this tower up here so that you can actually see what happens when you're looking at most of the houses. Spoiler, it's going to get really, really slow. So I'm going to run. I will turn this on. I'll turn it on when I get a little further up.
Cool. So far it's...
Yep, so far it's doing okay.
Yeah, it's not terrible.
Yeah, so you can actually see here, and I'm really not looking at very many. So you'll notice what's happening is when you look at the profiler, the rendering setup time is starting to climb. And you can see that the render thread and the GPU thread are going up. And so if you haven't seen the profiling streams, just as a quick overview, the way you want to analyze what your frame time is, which is what really matters, and you want this to be below about like 20, if at all possible, because that's going to run at around 60 frames per second. It takes the biggest one of these three numbers. So the game thread, the render thread, and the GPU thread is sort of like a game of whack-a-mole, and you want whatever the biggest one is, you want to really lower that. The game thread is more your game logic, and it's going to describe what's going on, what scripts are running, physics that's happening, things that are like calculations that have to do with collision, UI that is getting updated. That's going to be in the game thread, which is the CPU. The render thread time is also CPU. That's like the processing of everything that you're looking at in the scene, and it's sort of the setup, which is doing a bunch of checks on objects for visibility, and then it's sending it all to your graphics card to actually render it. And then this is the time on your graphics card to actually draw it on your screen. And it's usually, it's the inner workings of the computer.
Neat.
So, and this one is usually, it's matched with the render thread time, so things look great. And so I'm going to go up a little bit further, and you can maybe already see a bit of stuttering. So I'm going to look out, well, maybe a little bit higher, a little bit higher. Okay, it's starting to get crazy, and you can actually get a sense for the number of houses and objects. Remember, each one of those houses is 270 objects. And then if we look at this, you immediately see the horrendous thing that I've done, which is going to get even worse as I go up higher. You've got a render setup time of 20 milliseconds. This is already, you're just done. This is all the space that you have. This is way too expensive. It's gonna feel like if you move the camera, this is also good for just diagnosing when you have this happening in your game. It feels kind of like I'm moving in molasses, like it's sort of flickery and slow. This is just, you've put too much stuff in your scene. And you can see how the GPU is sort of synced up with the render thread, but really the time here is coming from this setup time, and then the render finish time is part of that. So it's just a lot of objects. So let's go even higher, if we dare.
Oh boy. Oh yeah, it's starting to get a little more laggy.
Yeah. Oh, and I've got these skulls here to signify the most dangerous, the dangerous location. So now it's all the way up to 43 milliseconds. And so if you want to know what your frame rate is going to be, usually milliseconds are used to calculate frame rate. So it's just 1,000 divided by whatever that number is. So if you just whip out your calculator, and you just do 1,000 divided by 43, so that's running at about 23 frames per second. So yeah, that's going to be pretty rough, and if you've ever played a game like this, it's not very much fun. So this is kind of like a bad case scenario. You can see exactly where that cost is going. It's a lot of objects that need to be set up for rendering, and it's not especially complex objects either. There aren't a lot of like crazy complicated effects that you're displaying here, or like really elaborate materials. It's just a lot of stuff. Cool. So any questions on that? And then I will go to the really fun after.
Ooh, yeah, we do have a few questions. I was just waiting for a good break to ask them. So let's see. Also, thank you, Jason, for trying to reproduce Flamenta's bug. Greatly appreciate that. And then let's see. Actually, Elon Musk asks, would it be a good idea to merge an entire city building from the new packs?
An entire building or an entire city?
An entire building. And then we have
yeah, that's a really good question. Generally, that's probably fine. You can merge a building into slightly smaller pieces. So one example of that is if we take the big castle template. So this building, it depends on how big it is really, but this one is, oops, oh no. I hit expand all. It's gonna be for just a second. I can speak while it's chugging because this is way too big. If I were gonna merge this, I kind of don't want to be drawing that entire castle the whole time, so I might divide it into sort of the foundation level, and then take each of those 4 towers and divide those into a different merge group. So there's 5 merge groups total. That's probably about right. You can also throw the thing into one merge model, and it's not going to be that much of a difference. I've done a little bit of testing to see sort of what the delta is there, but I would maybe think about dividing it into 4 or 5 different sections. Slightly more optimal, but you can kind of feel it out. And if you really want to know, you can always test it. You can always create a lot of these in your scene and duplicate them, and then see if you do them version A versus version B, which one's faster. But yeah, likely I would say divide it up a little bit.
Okay, great. Because Luck of Buck asked, for a large building, is it best to merge models into, say, 3 different sections? So I'll consider that one answered. Kelsaru says an explanation demo of this on community templates would be really useful. I think it's difficult to understand without worrying about breaking everything. Oh, that is a great suggestion.
That is a reasonable question. It takes a little bit of practice, but hopefully, if you let me get rid of this. If you look at what you have to do for an existing project, I'll go through with Core Royale as an example in a little bit, and just show kind of how you can take an existing game and just quickly go through and set that up, and how you can do it in a way that's safe and you don't have to worry. If you use the default setting, it's going to be pretty safe. You don't need to worry about it. But yeah, it definitely is understood. And also, I would say, if you don't make a crazy level like this one that I'm showing off here with a zillion buildings, not every game really needs mesh merging done. It's always going to be better to do it, but not every game is going to be limited by the rendering. You might have a game that's really, really CPU intensive because of the game logic. Maybe there's really extensive like UI or like a complicated inventory system that you're working on, and maybe that is taking the bulk of the cost. So there are cases where you actually wouldn't use it, but generally it's sort of going to be best practice to do that. So let's see here. Cool. All right, so let me go to the castle. Great. So I think I have to remember where the spawn point is. Oops. I think, yeah, this one. Great. So I'm gonna. This is the same map, except I just put everything into merge models. And I just did this really quickly, so you could actually go through and you could set things up individually to have merge models at the house level, but I just did it all at the top level of the hierarchy.
Whoa, wait, I have a question.
Yeah.
If you have multiple templates in a merge model and then you update the original template, will the merged ones update as well?
Yes.
Ooh.
Yes, they should. Yeah, so you can set up your templates like this. I was starting to do this. This map is big enough that there's issues when I try to update all of the templates all at once because it's 90,000 objects. Mm-hmm. Like this is kind of how you would probably want to organize it. So I have a few things here that I know are going to be problematic. So there are a few materials that don't get merged yet. These are going to be fixed over time, but these like glowy windows I pulled out and I'm not merging them. And then there was a different issue, which was a bug that I found this morning, that these triangle tops were having an issue being merged, and so they were showing up.
Interesting.
Looking wrong. So I just pulled out the stuff that didn't seem like it was corresponding visually with the model that I made, and everything else, all 220 objects, go into this merge model, stuck it under this house template, updated template, and then they all have it.
Cool.
And so
and
you're
then
done.
we have a follow-up question to that. Till Death Do Us asks, will they only update with a non-aggressive merge? The templates.
Will they only update with a non-aggressive merge? No, they should all update.
Regardless of aggressiveness.
Yeah, the aggressiveness setting is just about whether you have specific settings changed on the actual objects. So like So where's this piece? Yeah, so this like foundation piece. If I went in here and I started clicking on these boxes as an example, that's what aggressive merge is referring to. So the merge that gets used uses the default settings, but there may be cases where you don't want that to be the case. So if you have like disable receiving decals or disable camera collision, those are two sort of fairly common settings that you would want to check. But the merge version doesn't use those. It uses the default settings. So when you use aggressive merge, it's gonna do it, but it's gonna be using the default settings. So that's the downside of that.
And
the non-aggressive just ignores them.
there was one more question and then one more comment. Jason C Design actually was able to replicate the bug Flamenta encountered, and he thinks it has something to do with how teams are assigned. And merged model, a team can't be declared, therefore it appears to treat it as an enemy, so you can do damage. Does that sound like something?
Okay, I am not
thing?
familiar with that bug, but that sounds like it is valid, so I'm probably
might be
gonna
onto
look into
something
that.
there.
Yeah, I'm gonna look into that after this.
Cool.
Again, this is a new feature. It's a beta feature, so like feedback bugs enormously helpful in
Our
getting
first
this.
beta feature.
Yep. Yeah, it's just a really, really complicated feature, and so it's gonna need a little bit of help to get working perfectly. So I'm gonna hop out now. I want to show the awesome reveal moment.
Ooh,
so if you remember a little bit ago, it was at like 45 milliseconds on top of the tower. Okay, cool. So let's see here. Hopefully this is great. So now, if you look at this, you'll see one gigantic difference here. The number of core objects is down from 90,000 to 17,000. There are still a lot of different objects in the scene. I can't remember actually what these specific ones are. There might be some things that are not getting merged, but the number is a lot less, right? So if I start running back to the tower, and you can actually tell already how much lower the render thread time is. Even though I'm not looking at stuff, it's already at like 4 milliseconds. But let's get to the tower.
Oh, and then while you're climbing the tower, I have one more question for you. This is from Dejected Always, and they ask, how does collision work with merged objects coming from a different engine? They usually make a simplified collider. With your mesh merging, does it do something similar?
It's the same collision.
Ah, okay.
Yep. Yeah, it works the best possible way. It's just the same collision. Alright, so I will show just a little teaser here. You can see we are looking at this angle, which before was up to like 15 or 16. So turn that off, and then we're going to go all the way to the tippy top. Forgot I can sprint. Almost there. Okay, now, you ready for this?
Yeah. Drum roll.
Now, look at the difference here.
Oh, yeah.
So this was barely running, and this was at 45 milliseconds, and it is now down to, on the render thread, 13.9 milliseconds here. You can see the frame times at like 16 or 17, which is basically 60 frames per second. So this went from like 21 or 22 frames per second, or whatever the calculator said, to 60 frames per second.
Nice.
And you can see that it's working primarily in the render setup time here, which is now down to 3.7 milliseconds from like 20 or something. And so this game, you know, it's got 90,000 objects, and it works. It's Sniper Alley. And this particular very, very expensive vantage point where you saw all of the objects all at once is now like works great. So you can see how you could have a really big level that's much bigger than you have before. I mean, this is probably like 4 or 5 times bigger than the upper limit of what you can make. And you could be more detailed with the individual pieces, and using this feature, just merging everything works fine. Cool, so that's a lot of fun. Then I wanted to show something else that's fun, which is, here we go. So one thing to know is that one of the games that we worked on at Manticore is, as you probably know, is Royale, and we did this a while ago. So this is kind of cool to see, because really this game it's a little bit outdated, and we need to go through and do some optimization on it. And I was looking around before the stream, and I was like, it'd be fun to go through Royale and just see how much optimization can be done. How much faster can we make this game run? Because it is a little bit slow, like when you're parachuting down and when you're looking at the level from here. So so I just set it up. Let me make sure my profiler's on, and then I have to make sure we don't wait forever in the lobby. So it's like 30 seconds. One player, that's fine. So I'm gonna hop out. Oops. Close. So Royale not merged. I'm gonna go to one spot. So I only have 25 seconds to show this, but this is sort of a really rough angle to be looking at. And if I pause it here, you can see, yeah, so we're actually, and again, this is a sort of worst case angle for this map. We're at 35 milliseconds for the render time. GPU time is matched to that. The setup time is high. The finish time is high because there's a lot of stuff that it needs to draw. A lot of triangles getting drawn. And then there's actually a few other discoveries of interest. So if you run here, I'm going to showcase a few other performance bugs that are happening. So if you notice here, there's a few things. There's a floater script that's really expensive there, and then there's some physics stuff that's happening on the player as you're falling. So there's definitely some other optimizations that we're going to go through and make. But let me hop out now. And I already did this, so you don't have to sit and watch me do it.
I mean, I'm sure that would be very instructive too, though.
Yeah, yeah. I guess I can. It might actually be more helpful, but.
Oh man, it is crazy to see the evolution Royale has gone through. Because I remember having Eric and Tung on during closed alpha to talk about how they made it, and it seemed like at the time they had done. Well, they still have done all this like kind of like dark sorcery to get it to work. And
yeah, let's say we've advanced our dark sorcery skill by quite a bit.
Exactly.
So I guess I can kind of walk through what I did here, since I didn't want to take the time to do it all, but I didn't go crazy doing it, and there's probably more I could do if I were more careful, but so like this was a pretty good chunk to merge. This hierarchy was like exceptionally well organized. It was really nice to go through, and it was sort of these easy chunks to just click the merge button. And I believe this is the non-aggressive version that I'm using here. So this one, non-aggressive. And so I just kind of like merged stuff, and you don't have to like be crazy about it. Again, like I was saying, so this is probably not the best possible version, but it's okay. So I just took this whole farm area and merged that. And I think I grabbed a few other things, so the pumpkins, the crops, and I was doing this kind of quickly, but it's okay. You literally just go through and you put things into merge groups. So the mansion was another good example. 233 or 2,300 objects. Remember, Anna making this mansion, which is really cool. I love this house. And so I just stuck this one's the house. So it's obviously a lot of individual objects, 1880, and stuck that in a merge group. And then there were a few things that had gameplay associated with them. I could have just kind of merged these because it will sort it out, but there wasn't really a lot here. So like the ammo chests, I just didn't bother with these. I just kind of hit the easiest stuff. So, and then let me just to show. So I'm going to select everything here. And so what I'm doing is I'm just going to do the aggressive merge version. Yes. So that's what I did. Basically, I went through, put the buildings in merge models and tried to get any chunks of static meshes that I could into merge models. And it was pretty fast. It took me maybe like 10 minutes to do that for the whole map. So like this guy is one here. What's this? So this whole section, I made one. I probably could have split that particular ruin section up into another. Anyway, so I save, and then we go to Core Royale merged.
Oh, and then we have one question. Dejected always asks, does Core already do occlusion culling and frustrum culling?
Yes. Yes, that is built in. I'm not an expert on the occlusion culling. I know that it's kind of expensive, but yes, those are built-in features. So cool. So here you go. You can see the difference. This is with the map with everything merged, and before this was at 35 milliseconds, and now it's down to like 24, 25 milliseconds. And the number of objects previously, I didn't call it out, but it was at like 19,000, and now we're down to 7,000. So again, I didn't do everything, but like that's way better for this sort of rough angle. There are other optimizations that need to be done. There's a few things like this ship I think was not merged yet. But yeah, just going through in that 10-minute fix is going to make this run, maybe 30 or 40% faster for most people.
Wow. So a little mesh merging goes a long way.
Yes. It's not going to fix every single thing related to performance, but it is a really, really easy thing to do that's going to make your games run so much better. That more objects you have in them, the more benefit that you're going to get out of this feature. And it's only going to get better over time too. Like we're continuing to invest in this feature and improving it and making it better, and it's going to further and further optimize your game. So you kind of want to get all of your environment art into merge models, and then they're just going to run faster over time. So you want to make sure they're utilizing that code. So yeah, there you go. I'm just playing against myself here, obviously, but it's definitely like I can feel it too. Like especially when I'm looking at some of the bigger areas, it's a little bit hard to see it probably over the stream, but it feels a lot smoother. Yeah. So that was that. Are there any other questions?
Not right now, but folks, if you have them, now is the time to ask them. We only have 9 more minutes of Ryan's precious time. Although, Tromvolta does say this is perfect because I'm filling out Old West buildings with tons of detail and was afraid of what this would do. Ooh, Tromvolta, you keep hyping up this Wild West game, and I have to say, I am very high expectations now. I'm so excited to play it.
Yeah, that sounds fun.
Oh, and then let's see. Jason C. Design asks, with potential of mobile coming in the future, this is going to be a must. Will we see tutorials focused on best optimization techniques for mobile? Well.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, this is something that there's sort of no limit to how much you can invest in making your games run smoother. I mean, there's nothing worse than playing a game that's laggy or that doesn't work on your machine or feels slow, and having it work on mobile. I see that kind of as an extension of that. It's obviously harder to optimize for mobile. So it's less processing power, but you really want games to be playable everywhere and by as many people as possible. So improving game performance is just the most direct linear path to doing it. So it's something that I would like always advocate for. Any game company will tell you when they've looked at analytics on like performance and how well a game does in the market, how successful it is. It's very closely correlated. Like games that, not surprisingly, are easier to play and aren't laggy are more fun to play.
What?
Surprise. Yeah. So this is the one that I hadn't seen. This is a really cool model. If there's any more questions, just fire them out. I'll try to answer as many as I can.
Oh, cool. Actually, there is one more. Lord Kale07 asks, so the best thing to merge are static environment objects like buildings. What should we work on next?
I don't understand what should we work on next part.
I'm assuming after static environment objects, is there anything else that can be mesh merged or optimized?
In terms of optimization, that's a big conversation. I would say that some of the stuff that I've seen that is not done right and could be improved. Anything that you're animating in the scene, it's really, really, really important to make sure that you have collision turned off on stuff, especially when it's in a client context. We made it default off. That's one of the traps that is it's more expensive than you would think it is. So make sure that the collision's turned off. So anything with a costume or other things that you might equip that are going to be moving around, just turn collision off as emphatically as you can, because that will take a lot of processing time.
Okay.
Another thing that I wanted to show here, interesting. So I actually have not done this, but I think this is going to work. This is live.
We're doing
live
it live.
Experimenting.
Yeah.
So the thing that I wanted to point out was, and this is going to be a ridiculous example of it, but the merge happens when you join the game. So if you have something in your hierarchy and you want to do basic operations to it with scripts, that actually is okay. You can't spawn things in with scripts, but you could, if it already existed, you could then you could rotate it or turn off visibility. So the merge model inherits a few different properties. So collision, visibility, the transform data, and I guess lifespan. So there is stuff that you could do. So we do rotate continuous, rotator continuous.
But that's a core component now? Dang.
Yeah.
Back in my day, I had to look at a Google Doc and write my own script to rotate something continuously.
Yeah.
Throwback to being an intern. Ryan was the one who hired me. Thanks, Ryan.
All right, let's do this. I think it's gonna. Yep, it's doing it. It's doing it. This is madness. I guess there's a door script on there or something. But so you can see this is a merge model. It obviously there's a lot of networked objects, but yeah, if I go in, I'll show a little preview. So this is still working. So you can do things with script to anything that's been merged. It's kind of the most ridiculous example I can think of, but yeah, you can toggle visibility and you can do other stuff. That was something that I didn't realize right away, but that was a great question that came up the other day. So.
Cool. And then we have a few more questions for you.
Yep.
Luck of Buck says, stupid question. Okay, first of all, no such thing as stupid questions. Luck of Buck. He says, for client context objects, can we still use mesh merging? Is it still beneficial?
That's a good question. So it should still work, and there's nothing about any context that you could put something in that should just error or sort of not work. Client context objects are usually not going to have collision, but I believe yes, you will still get the benefit. But I want to double check that and make sure that is true, because I haven't looked into that explicitly. But I believe that you should still merge them. It's not going to hurt. It's only going to be good, but I'm not sure if you get the full benefit.
Okay, so we'll put a pin in that then. Great question, Luck of Buck. And then Tron Volta asks, so would I still take a complex object and remove collisions and put my own box collider on it manually, or use mesh merge?
It depends a little bit, but I would say you don't, if you're doing your own collider in order to improve your game's performance, I would say probably don't need to worry about that. I would just use mesh merging. It's the relative cost of having those objects in your hierarchy and the system doing all the occlusion and visibility checks on them is greater than any cost you're paying for the collision that you sort of didn't really need there in the first place. So yeah, I would say just merge it. It's gonna be better.
Just merge it. Don't let your meshes be unmerged. Merge it.
And it's faster too. It's just it's way easier to do that than to get the custom collision shape in there and try to figure that out. The cost of collision is a little bit on load time, and if you, what's a good case? So if you had, it's really hard to think of an example where it would be better to do the custom collision. I don't think it's possible, but there's a little bit of stuff that you're spending on if you had to do a bunch of complicated collision checks. If you had a machine gun that was shooting a really complicated collidable object versus a simple collidable one, there might be a difference there, but I think just doing the mesh merging will be better basically every time.
Awesome. And one last question. This is from Lord Kale07. Where do we find out more about collisions? My games revolve around costumes. So any secret sources on collisions that you have, or even not so secret ones, Ryan?
Yeah. Let's see. Trying to think. I have to dig around for some specific good examples, but the one thing with costumes and collisions that I will say is you really, really, really want to make sure that collision is turned off on everything. There was a bug that I found recently that if you are using that costume script, there is a case where if you have the root client context with collision forced off, it doesn't always turn off the collision on the children, so you want to turn off those folders with bones on them. If you use the costume script, you know what I'm talking about, and turning those off as well to make sure that you're not using collision on the costume, because you pretty much would never want to do that. But that's a great question. And there might be specific things with the costumes that you're thinking about that can answer possibly on Discord or something.
Cool. Oh, and then we're right at 3 p.m. So I think that wrapped up perfectly. Unless you have any final mesh merging thoughts, Ryan.
That's about it. But yeah, you can see how useful this is. This is attacking the most expensive performance issue in most games, which is just the raw number of objects. And so you can make games that are way bigger than you could before, which is really, really exciting. I'm expecting to see a lot of cool new stuff come up after people start using this feature. And make sure to report in the Discord any bugs or issues that you run into, or you can message me and just want to get those things tackled and make this feature work as well as we can.
Cool, awesome. And with that, we'll sign off. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in and for your thoughtful questions. And thank you, Ryan, for coming on Core Live again.
No problem. It was a lot of fun.
And all right, I believe that is it. Bye, all.